I'm Vanessa, and welcome to my first mystery box draw. So how is this going to work? I'm going to plan out an illustration ahead of time using the prompt from the mystery box, which today, it's a mystery sushi cat. And then whichever figure's actually in here will end up being the subject for the drawing. So the plan has to be generic enough so that whoever we get from the box is still going to work with the plan. But it has to be specific enough so that we end up with a successful design at the end. So let me walk you through the plan before we open this guy up. So here's what I'm thinking. I already know I want to have a clearly defined focal point. I'm still envisioning a plate of multiple pieces of cat sushi, but I think it would be fun to call attention to just one of these, and I'm going to do that by picking up one of these pieces of cat sushi with a pair of chopsticks. This will be an easy way to create some depth because I'll have a distinct foreground and background. Already, I'm starting to think that I can use lighter tones and more vivid colors in the foreground and keep everything a little more subdued in the background to really push that contrast. I think it would be cute to give them all different expressions. I imagine that these sushi cats all have a unique personality, and I'm really not going to think about what that means for eating them. I'm imagining a drizzle of sauce and maybe some dollops of wasabi. These details will really help to just guide the eye across the page. Sushi, when I think of it, is black and white. There's that bright white of the rice against that dark seaweed wrapper. Already, that's going to give a lot of contrast in tones, and I think I want to stick with that theme of contrast as I move into my color palette. I'm planning to use a complementary color scheme, picking hues on opposite sides of the color wheel. Blue and orange, yellow and purple, or green and red. I'm seeing a lot of reds and oranges on the box already, so I'm feeling pretty confident that this will work. Final touches, when I think of food photography, I think of just part of that image being really sharp and in focus, while the rest of it is kind of blurred out. So I'm going to plan to use a filter layer to slightly blur the background to give even more of that impression of depth. Time for the unboxing. I have been waiting for so long to find out who's in here. I've just had this box sitting on my desk, just thinking I want to do this challenge, but I haven't had the time, and it's finally the time. Double packaging. Who's gonna be the subject of our drawing? Oh, it comes in a bunch of pieces. What? Who do we have? Hi, Jasper. Mike. Look who we got. And he comes with all of his accessories, but it's this guy. So, we have our drawing subject. This is good. I was kind of worried that it was going to be one of the really special ones, and then the plan might have been a little harder to make work. But I'm feeling pretty confident about the guy that we got. So let's see how this is all going to come together.
There he is in all his glory. Look at the little seaweed hat.
I think he's going to make a fine muse for us today, so let's get to work on the drawing. I'm starting by taking the plan and lowering the opacity, and I'm just going to make a new layer and draw right on top and sort of readjust, resize things to make this composition look a little cleaner. Now that I have the shapes roughly in place, I'm going to start working on more of the details from the mystery box cat. I can start refining the shape of the seaweed band, I can put in the markings of the fur, and also his little seaweed topping. I really want to give the impression that these cats are made of rice, so I'm going to sketch in a little bit of that texture on its cheeks. I don't want things to get too busy, so I'm really going to be mindful about where I'm putting this texture. I just want it to be enough to be convincing of rice. In comes the sauce. I had a bit of a hard time getting this to look good from the start, but thankfully I can use the liquefy tool and just push things around until I like how the shapes line up. Here's how the cleaned sketch looked. Now let's jump ahead to the finished line art with base colors. I'm gonna throw in a shadow gradient over the plate before I do anything else. This will help me keep track of the direction of light. Now I'm going to start to sketch in some texture over the lighter parts of the plate. I'm imagining almost a wood textured plate, something that just kind of feels fancy. Wow, remember when I said I didn't want that rice texture to get too busy? I'm sort of testing things out on this first guy. I really think the key to making this whole thing look good is going to be nailing those textures. So I'm trying to figure out a way to make the paper feel crinkly, the rice to feel sticky, and the fur to feel smooth and soft. I'm laying down lighter and more vivid tones of reds and browns over top of a base of darker and duller tones to really build up that feeling of fur. I'm using a similar technique to create the grains of rice. I'm laying down ovals of a darker gray, and then I'm gonna put in lighter tones around the perimeters of the grains of rice. My first step with this seaweed is just to lighten things up a little bit. I think it was too dark from the start. Now I'm going to use a darker tone to paint in some shadows. I'm trying to break up these shapes. Now I'm going to paint in some brighter highlights over the parts of the seaweed where the light is reflecting. When I've had seaweed salad, I would describe it as being crisp and slick and juicy and crunchy all at the same time, and I really want to give those same feelings to the seaweed on my cats. I think by keeping more extreme lights and darks, I can give that impression that this seaweed is slightly wet and slippery and reflecting the light. I haven't totally been loving how the background color is meshing with the rest of the palette. I think it looks a little too blue, and I want to push it more towards neutral. So what I'm doing is just putting in some layers of red and green over top of the background color I already have, and I'm just playing around with the opacity on those layers until I find a balance I'm happy with. Now for our focal cat. I'm starting by just brightening him up a little bit. I really want to make sure that this cat stands out against the other cats on the plate. And now I'm just gonna paint in the details using the same techniques that I used for the background cats. I really cannot get over how I've made these adorable little sushi cats, and I've clearly drawn them into a scenario where they are being eaten. I have given no details in the illustration to assume anything other than that these cats are on their way to a most unpleasant death. Most of them are just oblivious, but the guy in the back, he knows. But maybe I can add a little PS to this drawing, a detail that just you and I know about. I'm going to decide that instead of being picked up to be eaten, these little guys are being picked up to be adopted and to be brought into their new homes. That's a much more comforting way to think of this, don't you agree? Start to define the shape of these chopsticks a little more. I'm just kind of basing these off of the chopsticks that I have in my kitchen. They're hard, plastic, and a little heavier than you might expect, but also they've got kind of this square edge to them. So I'm gonna keep that square shape and carry it into this illustration. Looking back to our sushi cat figure, it's got this red garnish on top of the seaweed, so I'm going to carry that detail in. I'm also going to draw in some little sesame seeds. I think that'll work really well with the whole sushi seaweed thing, as well as being cohesive with our color palette. This is the point where I would expect to be wrapping things up, but honestly, I think I need to do some adjusting because it doesn't quite look how I have it in my head. I'm having some issues with the shadows on the plate, so I'm going to start to bring in some darker tones around the cats and the plops of sauce. I'm hoping that this is going to make things feel a little more three-dimensional. I really want to make this foreground cat stand out as much as I can, so I'm bringing in some more vivid colors to really make things pop against the background. The fur also isn't giving me that soft, inviting feeling like I want it to have. So from looking at some reference images, I think what I'm missing is a whiter highlight. So I'm going through and painting that in, not everywhere, but just on the spots where the light is hitting. And actually, I think it's working out pretty well for me. I want to add even more cute details, so I'm painting in a little bit of blush to really make these cats look their best. I'm gonna add some highlights on the eyes now and pull in some whiskers, and also add a little bit of vivid orange to the eyes to really make them sparkle. I'm still not happy with the background. So now we're just gonna play around with things until something works. I feel like the shadows need to be more intense and the contrast with the colors and lights needs to be more extreme. So I'm gonna pull in brighter colors in the sauce, more highlights, make things darker in places, and just try to get this balanced. I'm also going to take a little bit of the color from the sauce and brush it around the areas of plate to make things feel like they're being reflected. Now let's add in the blur filter. I have been waiting for this moment. I'm really excited to do it. I'm sure there's a lot of ways to do something like this, but how I'm doing it is making a new filter layer on top of my layer stack, and now I'm just selecting around the foreground, being in the chopsticks and the sushi cat, and I'm just erasing the filter in those areas. And just a couple finishing touches here. I'm going to put in just a touch of glow underneath of our focal cat, and I'm also going to brush in just a little bit of sparkle on the side of his cheek because why not? I think it looks cute. There's my signature. I did this. It's a Tessa original.
Post-video wrap-up. I really had a lot of fun with this illustration. It was totally different from how I do most of my other artwork. Most of the time, I don't really have a plan ahead of time. I have thumbnail sketches done, a rough color palette put together, maybe some tonal planning, but that's it. And oftentimes I feel as though I get a little bit lost in the process and forget and lose sight of what that original vision was. So in this illustration, putting the plan together ahead of time and then being able to make more of the creative decisions on the spot to account for the Gacha cat that we got. It was cool. I liked being able to see the elements of my original plan come through at the end, and I feel like it really was a successful design, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Let me know in the comments what you think of this drawing. As much as criticism makes me cry a little bit, I think it's always valuable to hear the perspective of others, so let me know. If you're still hanging around, why not give me a like and subscribe? That would be pretty neat. Check out my Instagram for more art, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!